Hi, welcome to Tales from the SkyLounge. It's a podcast about business, consulting, and venture investing. We get out there in the world, we make things happen, and we talk to other people who are making it happen as well. This year is come to a close, and we'd love to rest and reflect and recharge our batteries here at the end of the year. And as we go out in the world and we travel to vacation destinations and recovery and family locations, we'd like to share our travel stories from the year from all the podcasts. Some of these are original content that you've probably seen if you're a subscriber, and some of these are a little bit of a B-roll footage. Common theme here is joy and happiness and some of the surprises and delight that you get from traveling. A lot of them are business, some of them are personal travel stories, but what they have in common is people are going out in the world, interacting with people and having fun and making things happen. So next year, we'll get back into it. We'll have a great 2025. Let's all recharge our batteries at the end of the year here and get ready to go. We have a great series of guests that are in the hopper that we're going to share, like some amazing stories from the world of business and consulting and venture investing. And I might actually have one or two travel stories of my own to add to the collection here after the new year. So we'll see you on the other side, and let's make 2025 a great year. Bye for now.
Well, Maria, part of SkyLounge is travel. So I know you travel a lot. You go talk to lots of different customers. I think you're even multi-continent at this point. What's the coolest place that you've gone to for one of your clients recently?
So they'd be disappointed if I didn't mention them. For the last 5 years, I've been the fractional chief people officer of a company that is based out of Iceland in the US. And so I've been to Iceland a few times with them. And then recently, in the last year, we've created a development function in Porto, Portugal. And so about a month ago, I came back from Porto. And I just love it. I love meeting people of different cultures. I love considering the human capital component in different countries because business behavior is so different. The cultural norms and the business norms are so different. So for me, it's always super interesting, exciting. Being in the US is, of course, very exciting. I've done it for years, but I love the cultural component.
When you go to different cultures, especially multi-continent, how does that change who you pick for leadership?
You have to be really aware of the differences in the business culture. So I love just to quote another book, a book called Culture Maps, which is just sort of how it is different business runs differently in France and Iceland and what those cultural norms are and how people focused are they, how people focused are they not. So you have to kind of know what you're getting into. Doing business in China, for example, is very different than doing business in the US. And you need to know those cultural norms before you try to go in and make a difference in those organizations. So for me, the learning of that is really exciting, and every place is different. And so I treat it unique. I don't try to make it American, if that's, what is that called? American defaultism. I don't try to do that.
Well, Lewis, SkyLounge is all about travel and getting out there in the world. You got any crazy SkyLounge stories you want to share with us?
Yeah, I got one. So I was working... After I left CNBC, I was working for the startup at Sony, and I had an absolutely psychotic boss who decided, this is one of the bad bosses, right? Who decided that I should fly to London in less than 24 hours to meet with the marketing head and the CEO of one of our licensing partners for the division that I was in at Sony. So essentially, I had to go pick his brain and his team's brain. And so I booked a business class flight last minute. It was something like $10,000, ridiculous. I didn't get to go on the Concorde. The Concorde was flying back then, but unfortunately, there was no availability on the Concorde because of the short notice. But when I landed, because, the flights to Europe are all the overnight ones, it was the morning and I had a full day of meetings and a dinner. And fortunately, the American Airlines lounge was really well appointed. They had a great shower. So I had a shower. I had some breakfast. I was able to change. And I was as refreshed as I could be for a full day of meetings and dinner afterwards. So It was a great experience to use that SkyLounge.
SkyLounge in the clutch. I love it. So I know you've got stories. I know you've flown back and forth all over the planet. Tell us about a cool story in the SkyLounge where the SkyLounge helped you in some crazy business endeavor.
Well, first of all, I think I would say my favorite SkyLounge is kind of in Amsterdam, because when I go there, I have access to some Dutch food that is very difficult to get here in the US. So it's licorice and good teas, and that's not always easy to get. So food helps you connect with your homeland. I think the craziest experience that I had was living in England, having a client that needed an in-person attendance at a meeting, but having to be back for another meeting with a client in London the following day. So it became flying to New York to meet with the client, doing our presentation, getting back to the SkyLounge, taking a shower, redressing, getting dressed for the next meeting, and flying back to London the same day. I would not recommend that to anybody.
Oh man, that's a long day for sure. Did you close the deal? Did you make something happen?
The first one was more, I was a subject matter expert. So I think the company did close on that one, but that was, I was flown in as a subject matter expert. So I guess I helped close the deal.
Yeah, get out in the world and make something happen. Well, SkyLounge is all about travel and adventure. Surely you have a good SkyLounge story you'd like to share with us. What's your kind of favorite SkyLounge that you've interacted with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mentioned before we started that this might be the hardest question you've asked me. I think I've been fortunate that I haven't had to be, and somewhat by design, but I've never been on a travel every week job. And so I think my travel is a little bit more sporadic. I'll tell you two stories. One, I would say my kind of favorite in my head SkyLounge stories are the ones where you're in a SkyLounge, and they're always packed, by the way. It doesn't matter when you're traveling, morning, night, like where you are. It's just everyone's in this, it's packed all the time. It's packed. But there's always that person that pretends it's not packed, as in having some strategic meeting openly on speakerphone in front of hundreds of people, where everyone's like, I feel like I'm in this strategic discussion. I should tell them not to do that. That's a bad idea. Does he want us all the way in?
Yeah.
I always think of this SkyLounge when I'm there. I'm always like, can anyone hear me? I don't want to disrupt anything, but there's always someone with the phone, they're holding it out here on speakerphone. Like, no, you tell so-and-so not to do that.
We can hear you. Calm down, buddy. It's okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's sort of a somewhat generic, but I feel like every SkyLounge I've ever been into, something like that happens. But my most recent travel, I'll call it a horror story, was I was trying to get up and back. So one of those, I'm going for one meeting, I'm going to be back. I'm gone for less than 24 hours. And so I was working in the morning, and I was working at home because I didn't want to waste the time to go to the office. And I was on a meeting that ran long and became a little bit I can't get off this meeting. I got to get in the car and take it from the road. So I was grabbing my stuff and I was running out the house, got in the car, got all the way down to the airport, which is like a 30 to 35-minute drive. I got to Clear to go through the Clear thing, made it through Clear, no problem. And after Clear, I went to put everything back in my pockets, and I realized I didn't have my wallet.
No.
And I'm like, how could I have possibly gotten through security and I didn't have my wallet? And then I thought to myself, can I make it? If I get up, I
can do this. I don't have to eat.
I have
right.
Okay. Can I get up and get back without? And I realized that they didn't have Clear at the Indianapolis airport. So if I got to Indianapolis, there was no way for me to get back. And then if they risked, if I was the random person that got pulled out of the line, then I would be stuck there. And I called my wife, and she said, well, I can ship it to you. I'm like, there's not enough time for it to get up there. And I'm like, I'm just going to pause, right? Go slow to go fast. I'm going to pause and make sure I can get not only there, which I know I could, but I can actually get back. But I mean, how embarrassing to be like going on your work trip, I did my wallet. I don't remember as kids or something disrupted my morning routine when I put like my phone and my wallet and my stuff in my pockets. And I never put it in the morning. And then because of the rush of the meeting, I never recovered. So I've now put steps in place so that I would have ID and security in my bag. In my wallet, I could probably make it there or back.
Yeah. I've got the backpack set up. It doesn't go anywhere unless I'm out the door and there's
Exactly. Yeah. That's what
there's missing places, right?
Well, you're in Dallas. I know you got a really good airport there. You got any great travel stories from the road?
Yeah, it's funny. My great travel. So I am in Dallas, which means I'm beholden to American Airlines. I think I was looking in preparation for this. I think I have something like 2.7 flown miles on American in my career, which is puts me in a interesting stem. Not quite executive platinum, but I am platinum. But so normally when I walk up, I look at the upgrade list and I'm number 42 on the upgrade list with 2 seats available. You know how that is.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say 2 things. One is the Admiral's Lounge at LAX is one of my favorites. It's spectacular. I don't know if you've been in there, but it's on the 2nd floor. It's glass all the way around. It's really amazing. I've never seen a movie star in there, but it's an amazing lounge. But I would say one of my greatest travel stories actually wasn't on American. Was I was flying from Dallas to Atlanta on Delta, and the captain of our flight was his last flight.
Oh, wow.
And we landed in Atlanta and diverted onto a taxiway that was lined with fire trucks. You sprayed hoses over the top of the plane.
Wow.
It was really amazing. And what I thought about as I was getting ready, at the time, it was just spectacular. It was really amazing to see how well that guy was treated. And what I thought about this was, I wonder if Delta still does that. I wonder if, if their team still matters as much to them now as it did back then. Because I just think, man, it feels like we all grind really hard and we all get beaten a little bit more. But a culture like that, I mean, it's the reason why Delta is who they are. I hope they still are that way. But it was really an amazing experience.
Hey, Mike, it's all about travel here in the SkyLounge. And, you got any good airplane stories to tell us?
So my favorite story is right out of school. In fact, I dropped out of graduate school at Northeastern in Boston to take a job to run a privatization program for USAID and Brown University. And they hired me because they needed a Russian-speaking MBA. And they needed a Russian speaker who was not a native Russian speaker, because a native Russian speaker back then would never be accepted. They'd be considered carpetbaggers. They had to have somebody that spoke with a heavy accent, that made lots of mistakes, but still knew something about business. I hardly knew anything, but they hired me, and I flew over. I stopped off in Germany for a week, and then went to get my flight in Frankfurt, and I missed it because I got lost in the German subway system. I speak many languages. German is not one of them. And even though I was actually still 10 minutes early, that they still like Germans, they left early. So I was pretty ticked. And I freaked out a little bit because there were no cell phones. This is 1993. There was no way to contact somebody in Belarus in real time. My plane was just going to get there, and they had no idea where I was. The next plane to Minsk was in 2 days. So Lufthansa shoved me on a flight to Moscow, I think mainly to get rid of me. In fact, I'm sure that's what it was, to get rid of me. So they stuck me on a plane to Moscow. I made it to Moscow. I did not have an entry visa for Russia, only Belarus. So I get to the visa station, and I was desperate. I played dirty. I was tired. I was scared. I was frustrated. And I basically blamed it all on the Germans, because I knew the one thing that back then would always play with the Russians was blame it on the Germans. Yeah. Right? So the Germans screwed me just like Hitler did back in 1941. Right. And that was enough that they gave me a visa, and somehow they gave me credit for my incomplete flight so that I could then take an internal flight from Moscow to Minsk. So I transferred over to the domestic airport, and I waited 12 hours for that flight, wondering kind of what was going to happen next. I finally got on that flight on what must have been a million-year-old aircraft. It was a Tupolev 134, a knockoff of our L-1011. And back then, on sort of ex-Soviet planes, it was like a bus. There were no assigned seats. You got a ticket and you found a seat, and that's where I was. So as the American, they put me on the plane last, and my seat was next to a passed out Russian soldier. He was just completely out, but he was taking half of my seat. We take off. It's 10 at night. Again, there's nobody meeting me at the airport. I'm making this up as I go along, as a 23-year-old speaking broken Russian. On the plane, the guy across from me asked me what time it is. And I didn't realize at the time. I showed him my watch. I couldn't hear that. There's no soundproofing. There was just 80 decibels of jet engine going on behind me. But, he saw my watch, and he confirmed his suspicions that I was American. Started having a conversation, and they told me they were smugglers. They smuggled basically bootleg CDs and got boom boxes basically across the border without the tariffs. And we come in for a landing. They say, what are you doing? I said, well, I guess I'm just going to get a hotel. They say, you can't just get a hotel, right? There's a whole process. You can't just walk into a hotel here and get a reservation. There's a whole process by which you have to do that. So you should come home with us. I thought, well, it's either that or stay in the airport. So I went home with these guys who literally told me they were criminals. They told me they were criminals. And I go home with them, and we feast on sauerkraut and pickled garlic and vodka. And back then I was a total lightweight. So after 2-3 shots, I was gone. I passed out. I woke up, and they're as good as my word. They found the business card of the guy who was supposed to meet me at the airport in my wallet. They called him, and he came and got me. And those guys became very good friends of mine. I still keep in touch with them to this day.
Oh, that's so awesome. Wow.
And if I were in my age now, I never would have done that. That's only because I was 23 and naive and stupid that I ever would have done anything like that.
Wow. That is so cool. So, we've already figured out you're a traveler, and, this is all about travel in the SkyLounge. Do you have any interesting SkyLounge or travel stories for us?
Well, I will say that I laugh when I think about my kids in the SkyLounge because, throughout my life, I've done some things, but your kids never know it, right? They don't have any appreciation for sort of what you do for a living and, anything that you may have had an accomplishment with. So like, I always think, well, when they get to be adults, they'll look back and say, yeah, my mom did some pretty cool things. But our daughter goes to school 2.5 hours south of Budapest. And so we were taking her to school. And so, of course, you're like you have to have a long delay and you're there 3 hours at a time. And I'm like, oh, let's go on a SkyLounge. She's like, what? So like, this is like, and she tells all her, oh my goodness, you would not believe my mom has like this special place that she's allowed to go in the airport, so like, for whatever reason, that resonated more with my child than anything I've ever done professionally. So obviously
that is
it makes
awesome.
a really big impression when you can go in and you can get like as many Cokes as you want for free. So yes, that would be my
free, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they have like peanuts.
That is awesome.
Yes.
So I know in your future, there's going to be a few SkyLounges and that you've flown a couple different places, in your career, being in aviation. So you got any great SkyLounge stories for us?
A couple. The one that actually stands out that I was thinking about when you share with me the topic of the podcast here is a flight I've had actually coming back from Dubai, or from China actually. I had a stopover in Dubai, and then I boarded the plane and I found myself in the middle seat, which is never great, right? This was Dubai, Germany. Middle seat on the right of me, I had this journalist who was like a book writer and a story writer. On the left of me, I had a boat captain.
Oh, wow.
So about like 10 minutes in the flight, the journalist started to order the first glass of wine. This was like in the morning at 9 a.m. So she was like, ordered a glass of red wine. I'm like, this is a bit early, right? Like 9 o'clock. Like half an hour later, she was on her second. And I'm like, okay, a second, I'll do one. Let's go. Let's get this going. So I think until the end of the flight, we probably had 10, 15 glasses of wine. And this was Emirates, great service. And it ended up being this conversation between the journalist who then wanted to join the crew of the ship captain, right? Who was like driving huge, massive vessels across the world, right? And had literally, issues with women on the ships, right?
Oh,
and
wow.
there was this big debate next to me of like, how does the journalist now get into this boat, right? To join them. It was just a very obscure situation, right? And I really enjoyed that. It's always impressive the people you meet, right? Like when you travel. And this was a very funny one where at the end they were negotiating how this could happen, right? And like it was a very interesting endeavor. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, very cool. You get out there in the world, Bart, and I know you travel and see lots and lots of people. What you got any great travel stories to tell us? I know you've done athletic events all over the world. What's a great travel story that you can share with us?
Travel story. I mean, I'm doing a lot of crazy adventures all the time. I'm trying to think. Well, this will tie to some Atlanta connections. I got a call from a guy. He said there's a group of us. We're gonna run the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim.
Oh, wow.
What's that? He said, well, it's just like it sounds. He's like, we're gonna go to the North Rim. We're gonna run down, and I'm like, well, how far is that? It's like, well, it's 11 miles down and 7 miles across and, 8 miles up, and it's 5,000, 6,000 feet of elevation gain. And then you got to turn around and come back. It's like, holy shit. Like, are you, and I thought about it for a few weeks, and something just provoked me. And I think it was in January, and I pulled out my phone. I sent him a video text to his little group chat. And I said, I'm in. And I started training for this thing. And that's it. That's a travel adventure. I went out to the Grand Canyon and hiked, actually we ran it. It was rim to rim to rim. It's 42 miles and about 11,000 feet of vert. And It was a big day. So that was a one day adventure.
Holy smokes.
I will always remember. And I'm glad I did it. I got to know a handful of people a lot better. And we had, different discussion prompts, and we would talk about all kinds of things. And, what you share on the trail, it's pretty cool. So it's, that was before Business Outside was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, so you've had a hell of a ride, and you've probably traveled all over the world to some amazing places. We're in the SkyLounge here. What, you got any great travel stories about getting out there in the world and doing some business?
Well, I looked the other day, and I've got about 2 million miles on United, and I've got just north of 1,000 lifetime Marriott nights. So I don't know whether that's I don't know whether that's something to be. So I've been all over the planet a whole whack of times, and I know I don't know if that's something to be proud of or a cry for help. Probably a little combination, right? But in that entrepreneurial tip of the spear, that's what it took to connect with customers, and that's what running a global company looks like. But my funny story is back in the 2000 and I'm gonna come up with a number here, like 2006, somewhere around there. We had just expanded into Europe. We had some European customers that I just brought on a business partner to handle cash application for us, which is one of the credit and collections adjacent functionalities. And they were based in Ireland, still are actually. And we were at a JD Edwards trade show in Twickenham, England, which is just North London. And it's for the rugby, English rugby team, national team place. It's a weird place for a trade show. So we're at this JD Edwards conference. It's a niche local conference. And we're on our way back. And there's no one in our space there, right? It's an ERP conference. There's nobody in our space. It was early days. And the taxi driver was taking us back to the hotel, Heathrow Marriott. And I said, hey, is there a place we can go eat around here? Because I absolutely hate English food. Sorry to all the Brits on the phone, but but I'm an Indian food guy. I said, do you have any good Indian place? He goes, oh, this place called Zayani. It's right off the Bath Road. You'll love it. So we went there and the place was packed, brand new. Place was packed. There was one table in the corner. And so myself, this business associate of mine and his sales rep, who was about 24 years old, just young kid, we go and sit in the corner and there's this table of 4 Americans sitting next to us and they were having a good time. I'll just say that. And they were celebrating something and you can tell from the accents, they're having a really good time. And the word ties, right? Ties, and they look like software guys. And so the sales rep looks at me and goes, hey, you guys look like you're software guys, right? And the guy goes, yeah, we're software guys. And he said, oh, where are you from? They're like, oh, we're from New Jersey. And he goes, oh, Jersey guys, we're in New Jersey. He goes, Parsippany. And I go, so these little tumblers are going into my head. And when they said Parsippany, I was like, that's the headquarters that get paid, right? And I'm like, no. And then he said, oh, okay, well, we're software guys. He goes, well, what software? And I said, my biggest competitor is from Parsippany, New Jersey. And the guy said, well, who is that? I said, it's Get Paid. And that table went silent. And the guy, one of the people there looked at me and he said, we're the top 4 people that get paid. Now, what are the odds, right? And we're not in a trade show in Atlanta. We are in some Indian restaurant outside of Heathrow. And he goes, then he looks at me and goes, who are you? And I said, I'm the CEO, just happened to the CEO of Sephora. And they burst out laughing because they thought I was pulling their chain and they thought I was laughing. Like if I was going to make a joke and, put the boogeyman in front of them, I was like, oh. So then I gave them my business card and they were like, oh my God, this is awkward. And I mean, we were passionate competitors. Anyway, so we got out of there real quick. I went back to eat the next day and the waiter was sitting there and he said, oh man, they were just talking about you guys and how tough a competitor you were. So you never know who you're going to sit next to and you meet at the bar, you just never know. But I met my biggest competitor there and what a weird small world story. So that's my travel story.
That's awesome. Favorite SkyLounge story? You were talking about your first trip to India as a business.
Yeah. Several years. First time over to India. I'm not as a software developer. You don't travel as much as a salesperson does, right? So, but I did go over to India early in the time with the company a few years ago, and got a chance to go to Mumbai, right, which is where our team was, and see sort of the financial center of India. And then one of the guys that I worked with, we were actually working with a third-party company, providing developers. And he was living in New Jersey, and he came over at the same time, and his family was from Delhi. So he's come on up to Delhi and meet my family. So we met up. We went up there, and his father had just retired recently from owning a restaurant, and it was like a top-notch restaurant in Delhi. And they put on a meal for us at their house, that was just absolutely the most amazing thing ever. I mean, I remember, they sitting down and eating what I thought was the largest Indian meal I'll ever have. And then it turned out to be the appetizer.
Oh, no.
Kind of rough. But yeah, I got a chance to see the Taj Mahal, which is, pictures do not do it justice. The Taj Mahal is an amazing, amazing building. So, nothing particularly noteworthy about the trip. It was just a great trip to see several cities in India and do a little bit of flying around within the country itself and experiencing, some of the hospitality of the folks there.
Well, it sounds like you have a restaurant in your future in some form or fashion.
Well, at least
we've been together.
Yep.
It's all about travel and get out there in the world. Do you have a favorite travel story to share with us?
I do. So my favorite travel story is the time when I went to Rio in 2016 for the 2016 Olympics.
Okay.
I was leaving out of LAX, and I was leaving the day before I was due to check in for my volunteer service at in Rio for the Olympics. And my flight was canceled, and I was stuck at LAX with many, many, many people on my flight. And all of the flights into Rio from LA were booked because the Olympics was the next day, so no one could get a flight in. And I finally worked my way to the front of the customer service line. I said, look, I'm volunteering. I have to get there. I've been planning this for 2 years. You don't understand. I'm staying for 3 weeks. I had a plan. And the thing is, I would show up. If I showed up a day late, that 3 weeks, I don't know what I would have done in that time. Some very kind customer service rep rerouted my flight. And she took me from LA to New York, to London, to Lisbon, to Rio. And I got there in time to check in for my volunteer service. And I was able to serve for 3 weeks. So
wow. So what a clutch play right there. Yeah. How many meals is that in an airplane? That's got to be
too many.
Couple, 3. Yeah. Wow. What a great story. Well, I think you hit a great point, which is what the SkyLounge is all about. It pays to get on an airplane, go talk to people, and make things happen. You've probably got millions of miles on dozens of airplanes. So, you got any great travel stories for us about SkyLounge?
Well, I was thinking about this, Todd. Obviously, I saw you like this question coming up in the conversation. And, I've done so much travel over the years. It's a little bit difficult to pick out one particular moment. First of all, I would say, to those who don't spend a lot of time on planes, it's not as glamorous as it sounds, right? As much as I enjoy the SkyLounge, and particularly the great champagne I get sometimes, it is time away from home, it's time away from family, and some of the things I've experienced, I've wanted to experience with them rather than without them. I went to Phoenix once in Arizona, and really I did not think the city was going to be that great as it was. I really enjoyed my time in Arizona, for example. And the other thing is we meet a lot of fascinating people along the way. I guess it's not necessarily a business story, but one great story that came to mind, and obviously there's quite a few that I can't necessarily discuss on this podcast, but one that came to mind is I got into an Uber in Jacksonville, Florida, and the driver was driving along, and she had a bit of an accent, and he turned to me and he asked me, do you know which country in the Middle East has a 2,000-year-old history of producing wine? And he fell off his chair when I said, yeah, it's Lebanon. And she said, no.
Okay.
And he's like, how did you know? I love Lebanese wine.
Oh, wow. Love connection in the Uber. How about that?
It's just one of those fascinating stories. And I've met so many great people on my travels. I think also, Todd, I'll never forget the time we were in New York together, and Chris Kelperon brought my shoes that I'd ordered and I delivered to his offices in LA once.
Oh, yeah, that's right. How about that? That was fun for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of turn it back around to travel and getting out there in the world. You guys got any great travel stories you'd like to share in the SkyLounge here?
Yeah, so I travel a lot to Greece, and Greece has a lot of small regional airports because of all the islands. And I remember waiting once to take off, and I see a guy with a rifle getting into a small car and speeding and driving around. And I asked the flight attendant, what is she doing? Why was she doing? He says, well, because there's a lot of rabbits in the in the area, he has to go and start shooting rabbits to make sure, or shooting at least to scare the rabbits, so that the runway was clean to take off. So we still don't have an AI system like the traditional rifle. Works much better in terms of enforcing safety in flights.
Joel, you got any cool travel stories?
Yeah, I have one. Steph and I flew. We haven't done that much. Actually, there's a train going by right now, so maybe I'll wait a second. Different form of travel. But Steph and I took a trip to Australia, and we flew from LA to Melbourne on an A380, and it's a very long flight. I don't know, maybe you guys are used to that type of stuff, but I'm not. It's like long enough that's like you're born on the plane, you've lived on the plane, you're going to die on the plane. So we get there, and there's a bunch of different jet bridges that unload an A380 typically. And so the jet bridge that's used for the coach class isn't working. What? So they unload the upper two classes first, and then they had everybody go up and walk through business class and first class. And it's like, oh wow, this is really, really nice. It would have been nice to pick that up here. It's kind of like the last moment as you're walking off the plane. It was cool to see, but kind of a silly story about that.
Yeah, didn't know this existed. Might be.
It was like, you've got beds up here, like.
Yeah, that's a game changer. Kevin, you got any cool stories? I know you've been moving around the country quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if any of them are funny or comical, but maybe I've just traveled so much in my career that I'm just numb to it at this point, but don't really have anything to add to that. Sorry.
What's your least favorite airport that you've ever been to?
Charles de Gaulle.
They have good food coming out of there. That's for sure.
Well, only if you travel with Air France.
Yeah,
they say that Charles de Gaulle is good if you travel with Air France. Anything else, you are second tier.
When I was flying back and forth to Bucharest for a while, and I would fly Air France. I used to live in Atlanta as well, but I lived there for 41 years, and Air France being a Delta partner, great food and great wine, of course. But man, that airport, the way it's designed, is not conducive to people connecting. Even from the same airline, it's out of security, into security, but I guess it's just all part of the experience, I suppose.
Well, it's all about travel and getting out there in the world and experiencing life and seeing people. You guys got any fun travel stories you want to share? I know you guys have been around the world and done some crazy things. David, you want to go first? You got a cool travel story you want to share with us?
Sure. Years ago, I was living in Barcelona and was flying back to Atlanta. Plane had a scheduled layover in Madrid for about an hour. We landed in Madrid, and on the way in, the pilot got on the intercom and said, "We've got a little minor mechanical thing, nothing to worry about, but we're going to put you up in a hotel tonight. When we land, we're going to ask you to get off the plane as quickly as possible and get on the buses that are there, and we will bring you your luggage back at the airport. Leave your check-in, your carry-ons as well. Just go ahead and hop on the bus. Don't worry about it. Well, everything's fine." And we land, and the pilot leaves us parked at the end of the runway. And I look out the window, and we're surrounded by soldiers with machine guns and dogs that are crawling up into the wheel wells and sniffing. And I think, I know what this is about. And the lady next to me says, "Oh my God." And I just kind of reach over and squeeze her on the shoulder gently and say, saying that word isn't going to help. We got off the airplane, and I didn't know airport buses could go that fast, but we were zipping down the runway faster than the airplanes. The driver of that bus did not want to be near that airplane.
Wow, holy smokes.
And they put us up, and Delta put us up in a really nice hotel. Gave us a shuttle ride back to the airport. We got back on the plane and flew on to Atlanta the next day. Everything was fine.
Wow. Well, hopefully you don't expect that again.
No, I don't think so.
Shit. Ian, you got anything good you want to share?
No. Well, it's not really, it's sort of a travel story. It's more of a geeky travel story. So my wife and I, this is a few years ago, were climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and I owned my own business at the time, as a technology business. And we also had kids. So I brought with me a sat phone. So there's the technology piece. And we're maybe 3/4 of the way up Mount Kilimanjaro, and somehow I received a message on my cell phone. It's very occasionally you'd hit these weird sort of pockets of cell service, which is odd. And it was a sort of an urgent message from my largest client at the time, by far. And here I am at, well, I don't know, 17, 18,000 feet. And, you know, you do what you have to do for business, and you're traveling and you're out of contact. And I picked up the sat phone and went over to a private space and called this guy on the side of Kilimanjaro and said, listen, how urgent is this? Of course, I'm willing to help, but, you know, we have a whole team there. Do you really need me, or can someone else help you? So it's kind of funny. You know, technology is great. Sometimes it does make it so that even when you don't want to be reached on the side of a very large mountain, you're available, but that's also how you conduct business as well. Paul, you got anything good you want to share?
Well, I guess the story comes to mind is really early on in my career when I really just got started my first international trip. I was going to Brussels, Belgium for a conference, and I lived in Birmingham, Alabama at the time. So you couldn't get many flights out of Birmingham, so I had to drive to Atlanta to get a flight. So I start my journey there is a 3-hour drive or so to the airport. Then I get on the plane and I head to Europe, and we get to the UK, and basically we had I had a long layover as it was to get to this 1-hour flight from London to Brussels. And as it got closer to my flight time, it showed delayed, and then it showed canceled, and the next flight was canceled. And so it took forever to get out of there. And it was because they were having some kind of an air traffic control strike in Belgium at the time. And so they kept opening and closing the airspace, evidently. And so eventually we get on a plane, and we're waiting for one other passenger, and they don't show up. And so we can't leave because of the controlled airspace, the controlled area that they had us in. And so it was a security concern. So we couldn't leave, but we couldn't get off the plane. So we're sitting on the plane for like 3 hours with no AC. And then eventually we take off, and they're like, okay, I think we can make it this time. And so we get up there, and then they close the airspace again. So then they divert us to the Netherlands, and then we have to get a bus, and then they drive us back to the airport at about, Brussels. And then I had this bright idea, because I was, it was a company trip. I was wanting to save the company money. There was 2 ways to get to my hotel. I could spend $30 for a cab or $2 for a train ride. So I take the train ride to save them some money. And of course, the train doesn't stop where I need it to stop. So I have to get off at the next closest spot. And so then I've got all this luggage that I'm carrying, and by this time it's like midnight local time, and I have to travel, and I have to carry all this stuff several blocks to the hotel. And then I get to the hotel, and then of course they don't have my reservation. So it just, it was a nightmare of a trip. And so it was like 40 hours from the time I left my house to the time I actually got to the hotel, and I still had no room. And they were fully booked, of course. So that's enough about the story. I could go, but it was not the best, first international trip for me.
Good thing is that you were young at the time, so you could roll with it more easily.
Yeah, I could definitely roll with it a little better then. I think I was 23 or 24 at the time.
Yeah. So are you just in the United States, or do you help people all over the world? Or
I don't. Actually, I never thought about this. That's it, because with as we talked about earlier, the lack of travel. Mm-hmm. Yes, I coach someone in the Philippines.
No kidding.
But, yeah, I do. And I didn't think about it until you just asked the question. Yeah, I have one of my clients that I'm a chief revenue officer for, husband and wife, and I actually executive coach the wife as a separate from me being we have rules, in this session. We're not talking about pipeline. We're not talking about sales. This session is executive coaching. She's new to being in the executive suite with her husband. and how am I going to do it? How am I going to lead effectively? And so that's a Zoom. Yep, that's a Zoom 8 a.m. Tuesday mornings.
Wow. Okay. So I know, that's a travel story. So you want to share the Philippines death march travel story?
So so I got I went to the Philippines. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but I lived in Hong Kong for 3 years. I spent a lot of time in Asia, early part of my career, and I was so happy to get the client in the Philippines. It was just really, really fortunate. And they asked myself and the chief marketing officer to come to do a strategy session with them in Cebu, which is not Manila. I'm not sure if you know the Philippines, but that's not Manila. And so I said, sure. And so we flew there. It took me 30 hours to go from New York to Cebu. New York to Seoul, Seoul to Manila, Manila to Cebu. Many sky lounges not open, my friend. Your moniker here not working for that one.
Oh no. Okay.
Total nightmare. Me sitting outside, in Manila, hot as can be, waiting for the lounge to open up because I got there, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh geez. Okay.
Yeah. No, it didn't open. So I sat in the hallway there while that was trying to open up. And then finally got to Cebu, and then was there I think we were there for 3 days and turned around and came back and did the same thing. So, yeah. And I got the platinum card. I'm ready for I'm ready for the nice lounge.
Yeah.
Did not work so well. Did not work so well in Manila, Cebu, Manila, nor in Seoul.
No.
Oh my God. No, not so good.
And New York's got a couple of sky lounges. What's your favorite New York airport?
I'm a Delta guy, so honestly, LaGuardia is really nice, and they really fixed it up nicely. So LaGuardia is nice, and I try to go LaGuardia as much as possible. They really fixed it up nicely after years of construction, and the lounge is the lounge is right off of the my door opened up. That was a dog that walked through.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they built the lounge right through security, so you go right into there, lounge out, get my work done. All good.
Heck yeah. It's all about travel and getting out there in the world. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
I think it's very important to travel. My wife and I have loved traveling. That's one of the things that brought us together. And we went back to France this year. We got engaged in France 20 plus years ago, 26 years ago. And it's just really nice to say, great, we go to these different places and revisit them after years and years. And then one of the formative times for me is that when I was in high school, there was a high school trip where I was saving up for a car. And then there was this neat trip to Europe that there was multiple schools were sending some kids to. And my parents didn't have a lot of money. But I was like, they're like, do you want a car? Or do you want this trip? And I'm like, I want the car. And they're like, no, I think the trip is going to be more formative. We're going to send you on the trip. You can buy your own car. I'm like, okay, fine. But it was one of the most formative trips I've ever been on because back then there was no internet. There was not we had just basic news services. We could read things. But there wasn't that kind of sharing of information that we have now. The world wasn't nearly as small. And I did a 22-day, 11-country tour through Europe. And it was just amazing, getting into Italy and England and Germany and all these different incredible countries, France, and being able to go back now, those many, many years later into Paris. And we went this year and saw it again, caught some of the Olympics. It's just really amazing. And so my son's 18 and he's traveled a lot. And that's something he's now really embodied and want to do that as part of his career. So we'll see how that turns out. But he's not bad for 18-year-old. I think he's been to 11 different countries and 32 states. So not bad for an 18-year-old.
Very cool. You got a favorite airport that from your European vacation?
Favorite airport. We spent a lot of time in Charles de Gaulle. It's all right. It's a big, sprawling airport. Frankfurt was a great little airport. I remember that very much. Enjoyed it. We did one trip a long time ago where we flew in and out of Serbia. So I actually have a Romanian client. So we like having some like close proximity where I've been and get to is really neat, having to go to those different places. And it's fascinating. It's just like flying around the U.S. Each airport's a little more distinctive and different, and learn something new about the culture at each one.
Wow, very cool. Well, it's all about travel and getting out there in the world. I know you're a world traveler. You got any great travel stories that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I go to different places. Not a whole lot, I would say, but I think most of my visits are like Pakistan twice a year, sitting down with the team, meeting my family, friends, parents. So that's a good dual benefit. And then also visited Philippines. That's where I'm sitting down with the team. Obviously, that makes a huge difference. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, can't think of any interesting story on top of my head, but I do think like for me, the interesting part is getting to know the people. Because people remote are different. So when you actually really sit down with the people, that's different. So you really get to know where, like, I'll give you one, like, for example, I would do a call in Philippines and I would hear the rooster calls.
Yeah.
And they're more.
Yeah.
And they'll shy away like, like, okay, there's nothing that remind me of my childhood because we were living in a village. Or even in the city, you would hear the rooster call. I miss that in the U.S. There's no rooster morning calls. So, and I enjoy those things. So, I think that's the interesting part of like any travel, at least in the South Asian part, wherever I hear those things.
Nice. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Yes, I have a very funny travel story, and I will say I spent my whole career. I love supporting founders, right? I've always been in support of a founder or CEO, like as a COO, as an investor. It's like I understand founders and what makes them great, and I want them to do more of that. And so this was probably the first month I worked at Rigor, and we were traveling to Memphis to meet with our largest customer. And I'm sure we were flying Southwest Airlines. Maybe it was a shitty Delta flight. I don't know. And the CEO, Craig Hyde, just is the ultimate founder in he's just like, yeah, I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to figure it out. Totally confident. And he was like, let's board. And I'm like, no, I don't have, no, I'm in the B boarding section. It's calling for A. I'm in the B. And he's like, no, come on. Don't be such a rule follower. It's no big deal. Just walk through, be confident. And so he hands his ticket in and he just strolls right through. And I hand my ticket. And they say, ma'am, this is not your section. Please step aside. And he just turns around and smirks at me. And I'm like, this is why you're a great founder. And this is why I'm the COO, because I love rules.
Yeah.
And so that was like a quintessential travel story of founders. So I learned my lesson. I never cut in the airport line again.
No. Okay. Well, you're a rule follower. That's important. I think, it's about travel and getting out there in the world. Surely you got some awesome travel stories. I know you mentioned Turkey earlier. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
I haven't done enough in Turkey to recommend Turkey. I'll say that if you get stuck in Turkey and you're really tired, whatever they're charging for the airport inside of that hotel, or the hotel inside of that airport is worth it. Because I paid way too much to sleep 5 hours. And I would do it again in a heartbeat because I was very tired. But good travel stories, man. Nicola would answer this question a lot better because that guy travels everywhere. But when the opportunity comes up, go to Ukraine. That place, to give an example, we ran into a lady in Lviv. And I don't remember why we were talking to her. She asked us some question, and she was from a very random country, like nowhere nearby there, and not from the U.S. I don't remember where from. And we asked her, like, what are you doing in Ukraine? And she's like, my trip got canceled because of COVID restrictions in this other country I was supposed to go visit. So I just picked a random country on the map. Like she literally like closed her eyes, spun a map, put her finger down, and decided to go to Ukraine. And like loved it. Like I'm saying how it was one of the best trips she's ever been on. She's traveled a lot of the world, and like it is such a rich culture. Like it is very, very impressive. And honestly, because of that, like it's kind of messed up Mikola's standards. Mikola's went around the world a lot and he's seen a lot. And so I think he'll go to some place that we think of as, real touristy and amazing. And he'll be like, me is okay. I can do all that in Lviv. So, and he's not lying. You can, like, it's got a lot to offer. So, yeah, that was a big thing I really, really enjoyed that. Aside from that, my wife and I haven't done a ton of extravagant travel. I'm more of a like go retreat into the woods and do some fishing and some hiking. And I'm a quiet vacation person. I like to kind of get away, and when I get out there and my cell phone doesn't work, I know I've succeeded in vacation.
That's awesome. Well, it's been great having you here in the SkyLounge for an hour. And if you got any great travel stories that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So I was my wife and I went to Rome earlier this year, and I did a plethora of research before going there. I read travel books, YouTube videos, documentaries on the Baroque period of art, because that's what a lot of what was going on in Rome in the 1500s, the Baroque period, from a religious sense. That was when the Protestant Reformation was happening, so there was huge upheaval, and art just exploded. And so I did a ton of research on that. I was super excited to get there, and it was one of the few times where I was not disappointed, where I had super high expectations and went in there and was just absolutely flabbergasted by what I saw and what I experienced. And it was just one of those trips. And anybody that knows that travels, and especially travels internationally, something always goes wrong, and yet nothing went wrong. I'm like, every day was great. The weather was perfect. And we went in late January, which nobody goes in late January. It is literally half price to go there, and there were hardly any tourists. You could just walk into. You have to get the big museums. You have to always have tickets in advance. But there were museums we just walked into that you would not be able to do that this summer. But it was truly amazing. I'm trying to figure out how to get back there as soon as possible. But yeah, that was amazing.
Well, very cool. Part of the interesting thing when you're in the SkyLounge is you get to travel. We're here in Prague, Czech Republic, and I just finished up with a client dinner and touring the city. Here's what I'm looking at. Very cool. Make it happen. You're in Denver, Boulder. Working Mindy's house. About to go to dinner with another client downtown Boulder, and then off to Grand Rapids tomorrow. 4 cities, 5 days. Let's get her done.
Thanks for joining us in the SkyLounge. Please like and subscribe to hear more from Tales from the SkyLounge here and anywhere else you get your podcasts.